I recognize Mr. Barletta from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here today to discuss the efforts to strengthen our northern border. This is a very important topic, and I'm pleased that we now have a partner in the White House who is actively working to ensure the safety of the American people, as President Trump has clearly laid out a series of essential border and national security priorities. As we are all aware, the United States is experiencing a deadly opioid epidemic that has devastated communities across the country. In Pennsylvania alone, drug overdose deaths rose by approximately 37% in 2016, according to the Drug Enforcement Administration. Furthermore, since 2000, more than 300,000 Americans have died from overdoses involving opioids. As a conferee on the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, I worked across the aisle to help find solutions for this national emergency. And in my own district, we hosted opioid forums where members of the community can come together to share personal stories, and law enforcement and the medical community can shed light on the dire situation that we are currently experiencing. And I'm encouraged by President Trump's recent actions to address this crisis, but there's still much more work to be done here in Congress. So my question is, can any of you speak to how the Department of Homeland Security is working to combat the flow of illegal narcotics from Canada, in particular the smuggling of opioids?
I'll start, and I can tell you what CBP is doing. We're enhancing, we're interdictors, both at the ports and between the ports. So we're enhancing our counter-network operations as a result, as it relates to the networks that are distributing these, and we're enhancing our interdictive efforts. And so we want to disrupt the supply chain of that dangerous chemical coming into the United States. And so those are the operational issues that we're focused on. And lastly, to make sure that if our agents and officers come in contact with this dangerous drug, that they are protected from it and what it does. And so getting them the personal protective equipment, as well as the Narcan and the things that are used to bring somebody back from an overdose, getting that in the right hands of our special operations officers, our agents, and the people, and primarily the folks at the checkpoints that'll encounter the traveling public more often.
And from the HSI's perspective, we're seeing a lot of the fentanyl and carfentanil and the analogs coming out of China. Now, the Chinese have come to the table to try and stop some of that from leaving their country, but they need to take a more active role as well. And another thing that we're seeing is these state and local communities are, especially in the North Country of New York, are hemorrhaging with opioid overdoses, and it's really taxing the social services, is taken away from the police services, which is taking away from protecting their communities. When I met with Sheriff Wells and Sheriff Mulverhill from Franklin and St. Lawrence County, respectively, they echoed that concern that it is a huge problem, and so much so that they've seen a spike in foster care because parents are not allowed, they can't take care of their kids. It is a problem. As far as bidirectional flow from Canada, what we're seeing is high-grade hydroponic marijuana coming south into the U.S. and cocaine going north. Recently, we did a case where we busted up a ring about a week and a half ago out of Syracuse, and they were smuggling coke. They were going pound for pound for heroin and cocaine, and it was very lucrative. And so that's what we're seeing going back and forth through those countries.
This is for anyone at the department. How is Homeland Security working with the Postal Service to improve inspection services of packages from Canada?
So, sir, we're working on that right now. The commission that was run by Governor Christie came out with its report November 1. It had 56 recommendations in there. One of those recommendations was to ensure that we get advanced electronic data on international shipments coming from high-risk regions to identify suppliers and distributors in the United States. So that effort on our part is underway. Of the 56 recommendations, of course, they asked that the department and law enforcement work harder to target drug trafficking organizations, and that CBP and the Postal Service use new detection capabilities for synthetic opioids. So as you know, going into a male facility with a dog is, you're sort of hoping, but at the same point, what we probably need is an automated system that can detect opioids in transit, but that's an enormous number of packages. If I may, sir, it seems to me that having gone to some of those meetings on opioids at a fairly high level, the president's interest in ending the opioid crisis is maybe one of the major things that he thinks and talks about. So it's very much a bipartisan effort. He has brought in pharmaceutical companies and asked them, what can you do in terms of creating a acute pain drug that will not essentially create dependency? There's a sort of a hook on some of these opioids. So how can we remove that so we can get the pain treatment levels that we need for individuals who are undergoing pain, but it doesn't create any neural pathway to dependency? There is a lot of hope in that community that they can do something valuable that would be that would help end the crisis. So there's a lot of energy and interest on that, because as you know, you're not probably going to be able to law enforcement your way out of this. It's going to be what we do at the front end when we're treating individuals who have acute pain issues.
Thank you. Thank you for